Thank you, Brother Cooper. He said I was going to give the presentation and speak the next hour. He didn't know there's been some changes. I'm going to speak this hour, and Barbara will speak the next hour. Just kidding you, of course. So good to be with all of you again. I've said before, when being here, we feel right at home at East Hill because you've been involved with us and associated with our work for 20 years, Brother Cooper, before your dad passed away, quite a while. So it's been a long time, but it's been a great journey, and I hope that you really feel that you are indeed a great, great part of our work. And wherever we go, you're there. You're part of our work, and we feel that. And when we're away, we can see this congregation and others, but this congregation especially, and we just know that you're always here. In fact, when Barbara and I first went to Africa in '99, I guess it was, the congregation began supporting us then through Brother Hugh Cooper. We stayed, Brother Cooper, almost a year. When we returned, Brother Hugh Cooper said, "Brother Jones, there was not one single service in this congregation, Sunday morning, Sunday night, or Wednesday night, that you and Barbara were not mentioned in our prayers." And I've never forgotten that. And I'll have some more to say about that probably next hour. But again, thank you for being such a wonderful and great part of our work. Only eternity, brethren, will tell the great good that's being done. I wish we had the time and the means, actually, of giving you a real report and a feel for all that is happening in this work. But I will not be able to, but hopefully just give you some glimpse and idea of what is going on. I really don't know where to begin. There's such a lot to say. But, you know, as we go into all the world to preach the gospel, now there are over 8 billion souls. And, you know, as I was looking at this the other day, see if I've got a pointer. You look down from outer space on the earth, and I've often said to Barbara, I'd love to go to the moon. I'd like to see that. And she said, well, you're welcome anytime. But you look down from outer space, or even from an airplane at 30 or 40,000 feet, and you realize everywhere we look, everywhere we go, there are people, you know, over 8 billion people now. One of my last trips to Africa, we fly to normally Detroit, and then from Detroit to Amsterdam, and then Amsterdam to Nairobi, Kenya. And I don't think Barbara was with me this trip, but you leave at night, or in the daytime rather, and you get there at night. But we were flying over the Swiss Alps. Never shall forget the scene, and I've been there lots of times. But I was looking out the window, because I always try to get a window seat if I can. And way down, I mean, just barely could tell, there were little roads going up into the mountains, snow-covered, little villages. And I said to myself, how many people live there that have never heard the saving message of the cross? And that's true everywhere we look, isn't it? Everywhere we go, there are people needing the gospel. In fact, the late Brother Batzel Barrett Baxter, some 30, 40 years ago, I guess, 40 years ago or more, talking about the church and the need for the church to be established not only abroad, but even in places in this nation, this country. He said, for example, if you stood on a street corner in New York City, you would count 10,000 people at least before you met one true Christian. So one Christian in New York City for every 10,000 people then. So as we look at this, I want to talk about today, of course, the fact that Didn't work, Chris. What's happening? It's in neutral. There you go. When we talk about 8 billion people, brethren, we're talking about, of course, with the gospel. The gospel is the good news, and that's the only thing that will save. Paul said in Romans 1:16 and 17, the power is in the gospel. I don't mean to brag, and I don't mean to pat ourselves on the shoulder, but I can truthfully say, with our heart being in our work, and it is, for a small work, and we're really just mainly, other than having people working with us, we are basically a one-man operation. And we probably average as many conversions per day as most any mission work that you'll find anywhere in our brotherhood. We just recently entered into the Maasai tribe in the Maasai camp. I have to tell you a little bit about this incident. A number of years ago, when we first went to Kenya, Barbara and I, we heard of congregation or congregations of the Lord's church among the Maasai. The Maasai, you know, are the ones that dress in kind of the red quilted like garments most of the time. They are nomadic for the most part. And so we heard of the Maasai tribe and that there was a congregation or two there. So we decided, with some of the brethren's help in Kenya, to go there and visit them, got acquainted with them. We drove for several hours to get to the nearest town to what you are seeing there, which is the city of Narok. From Narok, we drove out to where this location is. About an hour, maybe even an hour and a half, crossed the plains. There was no road. When we got near the village, we could hear the clapping and the singing and the dancing really welcoming us to their village. It was kind of strange. We got there and it was kind of late in the afternoon. It wasn't long until they served us the evening meal. We sat out on a grassy area. You don't see any grass here because this is inside the manana. But we sat out on a grassy area and they brought us barbecued goat and ugali. Ugali is just boiled cornmeal, kind of like mush, just boiled cornmeal, nothing in it, no seasoning, nothing. And that's their staple. And surprisingly enough, would you believe, they served us Coca-Cola in a glass bottle. I couldn't believe that we were sitting out there eating ugali and goat and drinking a Coca-Cola, and we were hour something from the nearest town. But we met the Maasai brethren, had a wonderful service that evening, went back to town late that evening, and one of the brethren went with us. We found us a place to stay, and we came back the next day and had another all-day session practically. At that time, I don't know why that keeps changing, but that's okay. I'll get there in a minute. At that time, one of the Maasai brethren was named there, was one of the main leaders was Benson. And you'll hear more about Benson probably in a moment. But Benson was going to school, one of our preacher training schools in Nairobi, which is the capital of Kenya. He came back to Narok, the nearest town there. They were having a seminar, a gospel meeting or something. And Brother Benson was there helping advertise the meeting, seminar, maybe 2 or 3 days beforehand. He was tacking up a poster on a light pole. A drunken policeman who was chasing the guy that he thought had stolen a cheap bag of charcoal fired his weapon, hit Brother Benson in the back, and killed him. One of our great, great servants there. Fortunately, he has a brother, Brother Daniel, that has kind of taken over the reins. Brother Daniel and I have not corresponded a great deal over the last few years, and I'm saying this, brethren, just to show you and to tell you the providence of God. And the very fact that this all happened is because of you to a great extent, and you are there along with us, not in person, but otherwise. Not long ago, just out of the clear blue sky, Brother Daniel contacted me. And before that, we had a brother here that contacted me and said, James, I have a brother that wants to work with you some in World Mission Radio. Says he has a daughter and son-in-law in Tanzania, and we'd like to have a radio program in Swahili in Tanzania. They say Tanzania. And so we went to work looking at that, and the radio time, airtime in Tanzania was just so expensive we really couldn't afford it. But it was about this time that Brother Daniel contacted me, and Brother Cooper, just dawned on me, this is our avenue. Here's a brother near the Tanzania border. He speaks good Swahili. He doesn't know radio, but we can broadcast radio from Narok into not only the Maasai land in that area, but also to Swahili, into Tanzania. So I got long story short, I got Brother Lawrence there at the car, who's been doing our radio program in Kenya now for a number of years. I asked Brother Lawrence if he would go there. As you know, he's the director of the children's home, very poor health, a long way from Brother Lawrence's. I said, Brother Lawrence, would it be possible for you to go there and help train Brother Daniel to do the radio programs? And he said, I'll be most happy to. So he went, spent a number of days, 4 or 5 days there, trying to move to the next slide. Can you move it for me, Chris, to the next slide? There you go. This is Brother Lawrence and Brother Daniel. Brother Daniel on the left as you're looking at the picture, Brother Lawrence on the right. And so Brother Lawrence spent a number of days with Brother Daniel and helped train him to do the radio programs. Brother Lawrence did some of the programs while they were there, and then Brother Daniel did some as well. Next slide, Brother Chris. There you go. This is some of the meetings there that they were having during that time. Brother Lawrence there with his back toward us, and Brother Daniel sitting in front of him. Brother Lawrence says Brother Daniel is very, very capable of doing the radio programs, and I know that he is. He's a very capable person. And so after a few days, Brother Lawrence, of course, returned back home, and they did at least a month of radio programs. The program will air once a week on Sunday morning from 8 to 8:30. Already had a couple of programs to air. Brother Daniel sent me a message with some pictures just the last day or two where he had met with some of the brethren in the hotel in Narok, and they gave him some time to talk about the radio program. And so, brethren, we're very excited about that. And again, you'd have a hard time convincing me and Brother Lawrence and Brother Daniel that all of this just happened to come together at the same time at the right time. You know, here's a brother here that decided that he wanted to help us. He's going to help support this program. He has a daughter in Tanzania. They needed a radio program, and he got in contact with us, and all of it just came about, not just haphazardly, brethren. The Lord, of course, had a great hand in that, and we're very grateful and excited about the fact of being able to broadcast the gospel every week to the Maasai tribe and to the people in Tanzania. Next slide, Brother Chris. This is not working for some reason. Bible distribution. We're always in need of Bibles. If you have extra funds anytime, send them to us, if you will, donated for contribution for Bibles, because we're always needing Bibles. We put a piece in one of our newsletters recently asking for funds. We got some in, and we tried to distribute them among different areas, and Brother Daniel got some, Brother Lawrence, Brother Stephen. This is Brother Stephen, his son, actually doing the distribution here and preaching. This is at a jail in Kitale, Kenya, near the South Sudan border. I've been there, and I promise you, you don't want to be in jail in Kenya. In fact, I had one of the governmental officials one time tell me, he said, Mr. Jones, one thing you don't want to be in jail in Kenya. I went there, and these people, it was hot. It's always hot there at that part. They were just lying around on the ground in their striped uniforms, had nothing to do, had no TV, had nothing. I mean, just barely enough to eat. But Brother Joseph is the son of Brother Stephen, one of our main missionaries there, had been working among these people in the prison there for a number of years. And so he went there with some of the Bibles recently and just had a few Bibles to hand out, but he gave those Bibles to whomever he selected. Brother Stevens, who is again the father of Brother Joseph, is working among the Kopot tribe, and I don't know how far it is from, this is again in Kitale. I don't know how far it is from there to the Kopot tribe, but as far as I know, we are the only ones among members of the Church of Christ that are working among the Kopot tribe, and we'll show you some pictures of some of Brother Stephen's results of his preaching there. This is Brother Lawrence giving Bibles there to some of the new converts. I have to tell you a little bit about this situation. We have an hour-long radio program there at Brother Lawrence's. Brother Lawrence and Brother Joseph, his co-worker, do the program every Lord's Day from 8 o'clock to 9, I believe it is, and it's in Swahili, except on the first Sunday of the month, which is today, I do the program in English, and of course I send it to them. But recently, Brother Lawrence and some of them have divided our work up there as follow-up work to different members of the Lord's church, mainly preachers in an area, rather large geographical area, because there are people listening to our radio program. And I need to say also, at the end of our program, the last 10 or 15 minutes, we give the listening audience opportunity to call in, to ask questions, to make comments, or whatever. I've done a lot of what we call talk radio programs, even in upstate New York years ago and here in Nashville. And so when we started the program there, I suggested that format to Brother Lawrence and Brother Joseph. It has proven to be absolutely a tremendous opportunity, because people love to call in. People like to talk back. People like to ask their questions. And from that, I don't know how many conversions we've had, but as I started to say, we have brethren now in certain areas, and when we get telephone calls, say from this area or that area or that area, wherever, we send those contacts to local brethren that we know, that we've worked with, and they help us do the follow-up work. Recently, one of our listeners contacted Brother Lawrence, I believe it was, and may have been one of our co-workers there, but anyway, he's a young man, about late 30s, early 40s, very intelligent guy, educated guy. In fact, he's a principal of a private elementary school, I believe it is, and he was living over near Uganda, which is about an hour, hour and a half, 2 hours from Brother Lawrence's. And again, the act of God in his providence, no doubt. He was transferred from where he lived to Kisumu, where Brother Lawrence is. Brother Lawrence and others studied with him. It was actually, we had a seminar, and I did part of the teaching via Skype. And his wife was baptized during the seminar, but he was not. He said, I want to think about it a little bit and give it more time. But about Monday or Tuesday after that, he called Brother Lawrence and said, I'm ready to be baptized. He is really, in our judgment, he is really one of the bright shining stars that we'll have coming on, that I believe will be really equipped and capable and able of taking on the work when Brother Lawrence is not able to do so. His name is Evan. I've corresponded with Evan's son, so keep Brother Evan in your prayers. He is so excited about being a Christian. He's there with Brother Lawrence, helping him every minute that he can. Of course, he's there in the congregation, and just going to be a tremendously servant, I believe, to the Lord's work. These are some of the recent conversions of Brother Stephen, again among the Kopot tribe, and it shows there that he had 8 conversions, and Brother Lawrence had had 8 conversions the last few weeks, so a number of conversions as we normally have. Brother Stephen, again, is up in age. Barbara and I have been there and worked with Brother Stephen, but he again is a real dedicated servant of the Lord. And keep Brother Stephen. His wife is in poor health. And by the way, I mentioned Brother Joseph. I can't remember Joseph's last name. A co-worker of Brother Lawrence. His wife is suffering from terminal cancer. In fact, she probably will not remain in this life very long. So if you will, please, in your prayers, remember Brother Joseph's wife in Kisumu. He really is in need of our prayers. But these are just some of the people that were being baptized. You might notice, of course, the kind of garment that these people are wearing. One thing about Africans, they'll wear the very best that they have, especially when they go into church. And you notice the ladies there, they have on just as fine garments as you can find. And where they get them, even the Massa. In fact, Brother Daniel sent me a picture the other day of his wife teaching a ladies' class in Norwalk, and she was dressed just as eloquent as anybody could. And I sent him an email back, and I said, Brother Daniel, was she teaching in Norwalk? And I didn't know where she was. I didn't know she was at the camp where Brother Daniel is or not. But he said, no, she was in Norwalk. But I'm amazed. I'm amazed at how well they dress. They really look forward to dressing up and going to the Lord's work or worship services. All right, next slide, Brother Chris. All right, this is the orphans. Some of them, if not all of them, I can't tell if that's all of them or not, but a good group of them. They're at the orphan home where Brother Lawrence is. I want you to notice again how well they are dressed, and some of you and this congregation are a part of that. Isn't that wonderful that you can see how well these children are dressed, how well they're being cared for, taken care of, and otherwise they would be on the street. When I first went there, Barbara was not with me. I went there again with one of our African brethren from Nakuru, where we were living, about a 6-7 hour drive at that time. We got there, we didn't have this kind of facilities. Brother Lawrence and his wife had started just taking in 1 or 2 or 4 or 5 children from the slum. It was a slum area and still is to a great extent, just helping to provide what they could. Well, as it turned out, later on, we were able to gain some support, to get some support for them. But I wish you could see, and I don't have a picture of it here, but I wish you could see the buildings that were housing these children at that time. If you can imagine the clay dirt building propped up by poles, the roof about to cave in, leaks when it rains, and all the rest, and that was the orphanage, okay? Didn't have water, didn't have electric, didn't have inside plumbing, and so that's where we've come from. Now, with your help and with brethren throughout our brotherhood, we have built, as you can see, this is our new building. This is the auditorium where the children are standing there. This is where they, of course, are fed their meals, and then we have our worship services and so forth there for the church. It is just amazing how wonderful and how far we've come from that time. In fact, before we were able to build the building, the government came in, and rightly so, were about to condemn the whole thing, and we had to demolish those old buildings because they were just ready to fall anyway. I've got to tell you a little funny story. Brother Lawrence and I talk 2 or 3 times a week, a lot of times by Skype. And Brother Lawrence told me the other day, called me and said, Brother Jones, I can't Skype because we don't have any electric. Well, that wasn't too much of a shock to me, because every time it rains, they don't have electric. I know our time's about up, so I'm going to quit pretty soon. But anyway, I said, Brother Lawrence, what's wrong? He said, somebody stole the transformer. I said, what do you mean somebody stole the transformer? He said, yes, somebody climbed the pole and stole the transformer and a lot of the equipment. I don't know what he was talking about, equipment. And he said the power company said they don't have enough money to replace the transformer. And they're trying to get money from the government to replace the transformer, and we don't know how long we'll be without electric. He said the kids at night are scared. We have no security much at all, have no lights. We have a few little candles, and that's the extent of it. And I said, well, Brother Lawrence, we've got to do something. We can't let that go on. I think it was last week or week before last. I believe it was last week. I was visiting a congregation not too far from where we live. And there was a guy in the congregation there. I don't know him that well, but I've met him, and I knew he worked with the electric company. In fact, he's the song leader there most of the time. And I thought, well, it'd be kind of humorous, him being in the electric business, worked for Middle Tennessee Electric, if he knew about this experience of someone taking the transformer. And I just told him about it, and I said, keep that in mind, keep that in your prayers. And I thought maybe he might bring it up to the congregation. He said, how much is it going to cost? I said, well, Brother Lawrence estimates to get a good generator, get it installed, about $2,000. He kind of grunted, I thought, yeah, that's a lot of money. He called me in the next 2 or 3 days and said, Brother Jones, I have a question. He said, how much did you say that generator was going to cost? And I told him again. I said, it might cost a little less than that, but that's what we're estimating. He said, well, I'm going to come over in a little bit and bring you a check. I said, well, great, wonderful. So he came, he and his little daughter, handed me a check, and I said, well, let me see what we've got and then what we'll need to do to try to raise the existing amount and hopefully get them a generator real soon. Would you believe he and his wife donated $2,000 for the generator? We bought a marvelous, wonderful, big electric generator. Some Asians, which is Indian people, because they're the best in that field over there. We bought it through them, and they are installing it. In fact, it's pretty much installed at this point. And so now the orphan home is the only place in that whole area that has electric. And you can imagine how envious surely people would be there in the area. So these are some of the orphan children. We're so proud of them. Keep in mind that we've had a number of orphan children that grew up there, have now graduated from school, gone on to university, some of them. Some of them are out in the business world. In fact, one of the former guys that grew up there in the orphan home donated a rather sizable contribution to the work there when we had a need for medical expense not too long ago. That was a lot of help. Brother Cooper's our time up. Next, got how many? Another hour? 15 or 20 minutes? You got 15 minutes. All right. I thought we need to quit at this time. All right. This is Brother Richard, the director of our Christian Academy. You've met him several times through our presentation. Brother Richard Rono, director of our Christian Academy and Christian school there, and also director of the Christian camp. Brother Richard, as many of you probably already know, contracted the COVID-19 virus about 2 years ago. I was talking to him on the telephone. I said, Brother Richard, you need to go get tested. He went about 3 or 4 times, and every time it was saying negative. I said, Brother Richard, you need to go get tested because you have the COVID. I hate to tell you, but you have the COVID. Well, finally, we sent him to an American hospital, and they said, you definitely have it, and it's affected you a lot. Long story short, it's been almost 2 years. It's cost a lot of money to keep Brother Richard alive. But I could not in any way just say, Brother Richard, you go ahead and pass from this life because I cannot help you. I could not do that. That was not fair to the family, to Brother Richard, and neither was it Christian in my judgment. So we went to work. It's cost us, again, a lot of money. He's still not over it completely, but I'm grateful for your support and your prayers and the prayers of the brotherhood that Brother Richard is a long, long way from where he was. And, of course, he's kind of got the COVID, long COVID, they're calling it now. But he doesn't have the cough. He doesn't have the shortness of breath as much as he did. He told me yesterday that his strength is coming back considerably. So keep Brother Richard in your prayers as well. See if we have another slide. All right, this is the Christian school and camp there. It's at the camp. Again, you've seen these. This is one of our graduating classes. We have from kindergarten through the 8th grade there at the Christian Academy. Notice again, I want to remind you, Brandon, that this is way out in the bush. And when Barbara and I first went there, the government had given, as they were moving people from one forest to this forest at a number of years ago at that time, they gave religious organizations and schools a certain amount of property, or a plot, as they call it. Brother Moses, one of the leaders in the church in that area, had kind of an insight into the government and the government affairs. By his influence, he was able to get 5 acres donated from the government to the church. When we first went there, there was one little bitty round mud hut there on the property. As I stood there and looked out over that property, I said to myself, man, what a wonderful, wonderful opportunity this is. And so with that, I mentioned starting a Christian camp. And with that, we started not only the Christian camp, but also a Christian school. Look also how these children are dressed. I don't know how they do it. Having been there and lived there, I still don't know how they do it. They live out in the country. Most of them have no employment. I don't know. You tell me, because I don't know. But they'll be dressed in their uniforms. We normally have about close to 300 in our Christian Academy. It's been down a little bit because of the COVID and because of the parents not being able to adequately support their children with their school fees. So it's been down some, but we're still up around 280 so, and a wonderful, great work there. Also at the camp, we have the church building, which Barbara and I have helped there a lot. We've also built Brother Richard a house. We've built an administration building. We've also built a missionaries home where Barbara and I live and stay when we're there. But I forgot where I was going with my story, except just to say a wonderful, wonderful opportunity again. We've had a number of these children that grew up, became Christians. In fact, 2 of our former students who went on to university are now back teaching in the Christian Academy there. And how great and how wonderful and how thankful we are for that. Another slide. All right, this is the end. All right. Radio is the way to reach the world. And I want to close with that idea and that thought. We are preaching the gospel through World Mission Radio in at least 5 different languages. We have an internet program now through a radio station. Our brother in Sulphur Springs, Texas, who is Spanish background, grew up in this country, been a member of the church for a long time, been in radio most all of his life, and he has been one that's really assisted us technically and otherwise. But he has been doing internet radio for a number of years, and if you know anything about internet radio, it's a great means and a great tool. It's not like a FM, AM station where they have paid advertisements and so forth. It takes a while to build it. But we have internet radio programs now in Spanish and in English that can be heard, of course, around the world. Another great means and opportunity to preach the world. Let me close with this thought. I never cease to pray that the Lord will continue to set before us wide open doors of opportunities to preach the gospel. You pray that prayer and see what happens. All of these that's come about, in my judgment, is absolutely a direct result of the providence of God and our willingness to serve. And I mentioned to Barbara just the other day, I don't know of one opportunity that the Lord has set before us that we did not take advantage of those opportunities. Thank you again. God bless each of you. It's so good to see you. I appreciate your fellowship with us. Let's continue until the end. May God bless you all, and thank you.